Wouldn't it be great if there was no friction? Life would be like a Disney movie. But friction in science is a little different. While it might make it hard to turn the page in a new book or peel off a wetsuit after surfing, it also makes most of the stuff work properly. So when we ask what the world would be like without friction, we need to be sure we know what we're talking about. Let's start at the very beginning, which Mary Poppins was clear was the very best place to start. We first need to understand what friction is. Friction is a force between two surfaces. It stops the two surfaces from sliding or slipping. That tabletop you're leaning on, or that chair that's supporting your bottom right now, creates friction. While we could all make the surfaces in the world super smooth to reduce friction, it's impossible to reduce it to zero. But let's say we remove friction regardless. Then what? Well, imagine living in outer space, where the lack of gravity means objects float through a void, and no surface means no friction. You float around freely enough, but you would never be able to stop until you bumped into something. While Sandra Bullock managed to miraculously bump into the International Space Station in the film Gravity, chances are that you would be lost for a long time. Equally, where there is gravity, as we have on Earth, how would we move at all without friction? The only way we would get anywhere if there were heavy objects that we could push against or use to pull ourselves forward. While many spend Sunday morning using the floor to drag themselves from their bed, it is best to have the help of friction between the foot and the floor to make the movement easier. If you're thinking you will drive everywhere instead, you might want to think again. The only way your car would stop is if you crashed, as brakes work on friction. Even if your electric car stopped your wheels spinning, you would still move forward at the same speed as there's no friction to rub against the rubber and the road to halt your progress. Fly then? Nope. Bernoulli's principle of flight wouldn't work anymore. It relies on the air flowing faster above the wing than below it. Without friction, the air would flow at the same speed on both sides of the wing, and there would be no lift generated. And how would you then stop this airplane charging down the runway? Well, it would have to crash, of course. If you're thinking this sounds like a super cool computer game, then let's consider the other effects of no friction in our gravity-rich atmosphere. Without that force rubbing against it, everything on Earth would fall. Like water, everything on the planet would try to flow to the lowest point. While you might think buildings would be okay as they're anchored by foundations, the soil on which they are anchored would freely flow downhill. Land would start to erode without the need for water, and everything would slip to sea level and beyond. We're all starting to see that without the wonders of friction, there would be no life. For instance, without a firm ground beneath our feet, how would the plants grow? We need plant life to balance our atmosphere and to feed us. But it's more fundamental than losing the benefits of plants' photosynthesis. Our body is a whole load of small objects loosely held together. Lose the friction, and you lose the hold that our body has on its component parts, and we would literally fall apart. Equally, fluid without friction creates superfluid. Friction in liquid is often called viscosity. Superliquid could creep out of its container. Now, to be fair, this sounds amazing, and we all want to see the experiment where liquid seems to come alive before us. But the human body is essentially a container filled with blood. Yeah, our blood creeping out of our container is best left for Hollywood zombie movies. So this frictionless world has its ups and downs, mostly downs of course. But what if life was created in a world where friction was never a part of the laws of physics? How would evolutionary history be rewritten? It's likely that nothing would change for fish. And as the world's soil would likely have already fallen to its lowest level, plants would carry on evolving as we have known them to. Evolution for animals, well, that would be a huge change. If we presume that air would still flow, wings will have advantage. Animals would be able to move around with the currents. We would likely still benefit from limbs, as we would need to push and pull against objects for direction and to stop. Animals would also need a sturdy outer shell. It would likely mean that a thick outer hide would be selected, as animals would constantly collide with things. Sharp claws would be handy too, so the animal could hook into surfaces as they flew by. As turning would be difficult, symmetry might be more prevalent. Rather than having a front and a back, we have two sides that take control of the direction of travel. Yet cats have evolved themselves to orientate as they land on their feet, so it's more likely that animals would evolve abilities that allow them to turn with only the flow of wind to help them. In the unlikely event that humans are the dominant species in this frictionless world, how would our civilizations change? Organisation would be key, especially for keeping your stuff in check. A simple bump against your mobile phone would send it hurtling for miles, or until it smashed against a wall. There would be a lucrative business in screen repair services. Humans would likely need to invent a way of connecting all known property together, so you aren't chasing your toothbrush and toothpaste every morning. The good news is that getting about the place would be easy. Transportation would be a breeze. You could replace roads with tunnels and launch yourself off on your journey, only to stop when you bump into your destination. There might be a role for cushions here, as you would want a soft impact on landing. It's likely we would invent some means of accelerating and decelerating here, but no one would worry about the distances needing to be travelled. No gas is needed at all. Gas price would be a lot cheaper. Wars may still be fought, but probably not for oil. Just imagine the complex systems of tunnels like our railways. It would be great fun to get places. So, if we were to draw a conclusion, the world would be a lot different without friction. It is passive and its generation and magnitude depend on other forces. It doesn't seem to be that powerful at all, but it is completely irreplaceable.